Hello, welcome to Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. Today we're going to review the new Mego 14-inch Universal Monsters Dracula and Creature from the Black Lagoon. I just received these today. They just came in today. And they're brand new. They've just started shipping. Here they are. There's also a Frankenstein that has not shipped yet. I ordered him. He hasn't arrived yet. I don't think anyone's got him yet. I don't think he's made it to U.S. warehouses yet. But he's coming. So these are unique among monster action figures. There's never been a set of articulated 14-inch tall classic monster action figures. Certainly not licensed Universal Studios action figures. There have been porcelain dolls, there have been vinyl-headed dolls, plush toys, motionettes. There have been some large format figures. There have been obviously statues and resin model kits, things like that, or like sideshow premium format figures. I mean, they're I guess you have to call them figures. They're not action figures. They're not articulated. So there have been things like that, but there haven't been articulated Mego style action figures with jointed shoulders, elbows, wrists, hips, knees, ankles, necks. There haven't been anything like that in the 14-inch format, or really anything bigger than 12 inches ever. I mean, if someone knows of a Universal Monsters action figure series in this large format, let me know. We've had 12-inch figures from Hasbro and Sideshow, and recently Mondo put out a 12-inch Creature, but not 14-inch. So this is unique. This is different. And I've long wanted to see a really jumbo size Universal Monsters action figure series. I was really hoping for something more like 24 inches or really big, or like those really huge Star Wars and superhero figures that they used to sell at Toys R Us several years ago. They had those gigantic, 4-foot tall, maybe they're bigger than 4 feet, I don't remember, but they were huge action figures. I think they were jointed at just the shoulders and the neck. And they also had Power Rangers like that, and they had huge Barbie dolls like that. So I'd love to see something like that for Universal Monsters. I don't know if anyone's making those kinds of really giant figures anymore, but I was always hoping we'd see monsters in that format. Well, now we'll get a closer look at these in a moment. Let's just turn these around so you see the backs of these boxes. Each box has an illustration, and we'll talk about those illustrations. Well, I mean, I have, as is often the case with Mego, I have mixed feelings about them. But the bottom line is that these are spectacular figures. These are really impressive, amazing toys. I mean, you just can't argue with 14-inch tall, articulated Universal Monsters action figures. Can I imagine like a Hot Toys kind of thing that would be this size but better quality? Of course I can imagine it, but there hasn't been anything like that. These things just make a statement. I mean, just look at them. The size, the presence, and this much improved packaging, improved from what Mego was using for their 14-inch dolls a couple of years ago. They had packaging that really wasn't very good for the 14-inch DC superheroes. This is a big improvement. So this size, it has a presence. It's kind of intimidating. It makes a statement. Just at first glance, you look at them, and no matter what you think of the details or the finer points of these things, which we'll get into, your initial reaction is just really impressed. I'm not saying you're impressed with the sculpt or whatever. I mean, they make an impression. You look at them and you're kind of taken aback just because the size and the color. And they have a physical presence which is formidable. They have a formidable physical presence. So you just can't argue with toys like these in this format. They're going to make a statement no matter what. So that aside, so we got just getting that out of the way. The headline is these are really impressive toys, and then now we can talk about the finer points and why I have, as I often do with Mego, why I have some mixed feelings about them. So let's look at this creature first of all. Let's get a close-up. Here's the Gill Man, the creature from the Black Lagoon. He has a very dark head. Mego also has an 8-inch creature that uses the same head sculpt and very similar costume. I don't know if it's identical, but it's very similar. And they put out a lighter colored version, and then they re-released it as a darker version. And that darker color scheme is carried over to this 14-inch one. So he has a fabric costume, like the 8-inch one. And you can see he's got plastic feet that are sculpted to look like the creature's feet, and plastic hands that look like the creature's hands. All of these creatures are based on a toy that was released in a series that was released in 2011, but I think this creature came out in 2012 or 13. And that series was released by MC Toys and Diamond Select, and they put out a 8-inch tall creature. And then Mego used, as they've done with a lot of MC sculpts and parts, Mego basically re-released that figure for their creature from the Black Lagoon last year. And that original MC creature has plastic fins. The Mego version has fabric fins. And I'm going to say these are fabric. I think these are felt. But that's one of the problems with being a mint and box collector, is that you can't touch it or feel it, and so some things like that escape you. It looks like the plastic breastplate is different. It looks like it extends down farther than the MC version. I mean, he's impressive. I have to say, I think this fabric costume actually works better on this 14-inch scale. Maybe it's the redesigned breastplate that makes it work a little better. I'm not sure. Now, you could ask, why not just make the whole costume fabric? Why is there a plastic piece like that? I think that the character really needs it to give him that broad-shouldered, more muscular, more massive look. I think he would look kind of anemic if it was just fabric all the way to the neck. But the 8-inch one, I think I argued in a previous video that maybe to differentiate it from the MC version, they could have made a fabric, built it up using fabric on the on the shoulder area instead of copying the MC's plastic piece. So let's take a look at the the box. Now Mego, frankly, Mego's packaging is probably their weakest point. Their card art, and all ever since the new Mego has come into existence, the original Mego from the 70s, I think, had pretty good box art, pretty good card art. The contemporary Mego, it's been a problem throughout, ever since the first ones that were released at Target a couple years ago. I think it's been 3 years now. Card art has been a problem with Mego. Package art has been a problem. It's a weak spot in their operation, and they really need to improve upon it and shore that up. I don't know if it's different personnel or maybe creating a more robust art department for the packaging, but I do think it is their greatest weakness that the packaging, sometimes it's not even a question of is it good or bad. It's in my opinion, it's not even professional. Some of it looks like custom packaging. I feel like some of it is just fails to meet a minimum level of quality you would expect from a professional mass-produced toy. Now, all that being said, that's not the case with this. So I'm happy to say that this packaging is an improvement. They've definitely worked at it and got their game together for this new 14-inch packaging. These are the first 14-inch Megos I've purchased because they're monsters. These are the first monsters they've made. Previously, they did several DC superheroes, and they were thinner boxes, and the top of the cardboard came down, obscured part of the head. And later they corrected that, but the first ones, you couldn't even see half the head. And those boxes were kind of odd looking. They were a little too narrow and they insubstantial. They didn't look like they really fit the toy. And I think that's because they were using a design that originated in the 1970s for the original Mego's 12-inch action figures from the 70s. They took the same template and used that to make the new 14-inch boxes. But, they're 14-inch figures in a box that was designed for 12-inch figures. So that was part of the problem. But they've improved it with these really handsome-looking packages with this with deluxe window that shows off the toy very nicely. I mean, you really don't have to take it out if you want to enjoy it. You can see it from all different angles, from the side, from the top even. You can get a good look at it. And the style, it fits the toy. What can you do as far as artwork? I wouldn't want, it would be a little kitschy to have like the creature's big face or something here. I don't want that. I think this is tasteful. It's got the creature movie title at the bottom. It's got the Mego logo. And he has kind of a watery backdrop. And the background, the green background on the card is this Universal Style Guide artwork. So these little lines you're seeing, that's from the Style Guide. They're trees. It's like a jungle. And a lot of creature products, not just Mego, but other companies' creature products, have that pattern, that background pattern on them. So that's from Universal. That's not from Mego. Here's the top. You can see the kind of jungle forest background design there. and it's hard for me to see whether the background on behind the figure has that tree design or not. I think it's just, I was wrong about the fins. I'll probably be wrong about this too. But I think it's just a watery color. I don't see any trees back there. Okay, so where the figure fails a bit, where the package fails a bit, or maybe more than a bit, here on the back, Mego is kind of up to their old tricks again, and in a negative way. This this illustration is also on the 8-inch creature, and I'm sure certainly that is from the style guide. Mego didn't make that up. That is a style guide, clip art kind of thing. But I mean, it looks bad. It's not suitable for this figure, and this background, that photographic background, is from a famous still of the creature standing there, and I think he's holding his arms up. There's definitely a still of the creature holding his arms up like that. I don't know if this background is from that still, but I recognize that background as being from a creature from the Black Lagoon movie still that has the creature standing there. Whether he's in that pose, I'm not sure, but he's definitely standing there. So, since they had that image, why can't they use the actual photo of the creature? It's hard to believe that Universal doesn't want photos of the character from the movie on the box. Maybe they don't. I don't know. Maybe they insist on this. But I know the Mondo, I told you Mondo also made a 12-inch creature a few months ago. The Mondo creature has a box that has a closed front. I think it opens. Or maybe it's a sleeve that comes up. I don't own that. It's like a $200 figure, and I don't really like it very much. It's not worth spending $200 on for me. I just I don't like the sculpt. If I thought it really nailed the creature and it looked perfect, I'd probably say, oh, okay, I guess I gotta buy it. But it's got a weird head sculpt that I don't like, so I'm not gonna buy it. But the box art for the Mondo is fantastic. And it has a painting of the creature. It's an original painting made for the toy. The creature's coming up out of the water, and it looks kind of like another famous still of the creature where he's coming up out of the water. You see his head and hands coming up, but it's a painting. And then it's got a title that is not the movie's logo that Universal uses. It looks almost like a 1970s grindhouse drive-in water-oriented horror movie, like something that might have been used for like a Roger Corman kind of water horror film, like Piranha or Humanoids from the Deep or something like that. It kind of reminds you of that. If it's not the Universal logo with that font, that style, it's a completely new, original title design that Mondo created. So my point in going on and on about Mondo is, obviously you don't have to use this because they didn't. They made a 12-inch figure at the same time, the same year, and they didn't use that artwork. So it's obviously possible to make a large creature that doesn't use this artwork because Mondo did it. So I don't know what the situation is, but it's not impossible to put out a large creature action figure in 2021 without using this artwork, because Mondo put a 12-inch one out with different and much, much, much better artwork. So that I don't like the artwork on the back. I like the front. I don't like this cartoony artwork. I'm sure it came from Universal. But yeah, it cheapens the toy. It cheapens the toy to use art like that. The toy's better than that. This is a better product than this design would suggest. Okay, so as I said, this creature figure is based on the MC creature from a decade ago, as is the Mego 8-inch creature figure. Whereas I wasn't too crazy about Mego using the MC design again for the 8-inch one, because it amounted to just simply a reissue of that earlier figure. I don't mind them using it on this big one, because I think that's transformative enough, making it so huge that it doesn't really, it's not rehashing the previous figure. By increasing the scale, it turns it into a completely new toy. So I'm okay with them basing the design on that earlier toy, expanding it to that size. But I'll probably have a little more to say about that in a minute. So here's the Dracula. Let's look at him in close-up. Now, like the creature, this Dracula also has origins in the MC line from a decade ago. MC made an 8-inch Dracula for that series, which was universal license, but it was a generic likeness. They didn't have the Bela Lugosi likeness. And this head on this new Mego 14-inch Dracula is based on that MC head. Now, it's not painted the same, and frankly, the paint and the color scheme on this head is a big improvement on the MC one and makes it look much better. And I don't know if there could be some tweaking to the sculpt. There probably is, but it's basically the MC head. Here's a look inside his box, and he's got extra hands, which is a little strange. I mean, I don't know what the hands look like on his arms, as he's sold in the box. I don't know because he can't see the hands, but these hands just don't look that unusual. I don't know if it's really worth giving him new hands. I've seen some photos of the hands that come attached, and it just seems like kind of pointless. I don't think these different hands really add a whole lot of value. They're not different enough. I'm not sure what the point was, but it's fashionable for high-end collector figures to have interchangeable hands, interchangeable heads, and so on and so on. So I think they're trying to go for that approach to kind of mimic what a Hot Toys or higher end figure would have done. Here's the top of his head. You can see there's not much to see from the side because he's all covered with the cape. He's got this cool skeletal bat design. Now let's look at the back. Now, even though this probably comes from the same style guide and is from the same set of illustrations, I bet, that looks a lot better. I mean, that looks a whole lot better because it's a textured, shaded painting. It's not like a cartoon illustration. And even though I'm sure it's supposed to be generic, it does look reminiscent of Bela Lugosi. It's very careful to step around some key parts of Lugosi's likeness, but obviously it's trying to look like Lugosi without actually looking like Lugosi. But this is a good image. I mean, that kind of reminds me of the 70s puzzles that came in the cans. I don't remember the company name. I mean, I have them. You'll see them on the show one of these days. But it kind of reminds me of that artwork. And there's that skeletal bat that I like. So this looks good. I mean, it's style guide art, but it looks good. And I have to wonder if maybe they're using outdated style guide art on the creature, if maybe this Dracula art is like the 2021 style guide, and maybe they're using 2017 or something for the creature art, because it just doesn't go together. It doesn't look like it's from the same set of illustrations. This looks much, much better, this Dracula. And I talk a lot about package art, and I can be very critical about package art, but if you don't take the toy out of the package is a pretty big deal. When I buy a toy, the package is part of the toy. To have a bad-looking package is as bad as having a bad-looking head sculpt. The package is part of the toy, and it's actually a very big part of the toy. So packaging is important to me, and I think a lot of collectors keep stuff, like particularly contemporary. A lot of collectors who would buy a thing like this are going to keep it in the box. So the box is important. Now, the costume is a very nice costume. I wish the collar didn't have lining, that silver lining on the collar. That Dracula's collar doesn't have lining like that. It would be better if it was just black. And it would be cool if the cape had a red lining. And I'm wondering if, I mean, obviously the artwork on the back, that has red lining. So I'm wondering if this was originally supposed to be a Bela Lugosi Dracula, because this looks like the Broadway Bela costume design. If you've seen Dracula merchandise that's Lugosi licensed through the Lugosi estate, it's often not Universal licensed because it's depicting Bela as the Broadway version of Dracula. He played Dracula on Broadway before he made the Universal movie. And so that costume doesn't require a Universal clearance, and Bela in that costume doesn't require a Universal clearance. And this kind of looks like the Broadway Dracula. It doesn't have the medallion, even though the illustration on the back does. And usually when you see that Broadway Dracula costume, it's got silver cape lining. Although you also see that with the movie Dracula often as well, because supposedly the cape used in the movie did have a silver or a gray lining. But usually when you see a Universal licensed Dracula, it has a red lining. And when you see Broadway, Bela Lugosi estate licensed Broadway Dracula, it has a silver lining. So I'm wondering if this was originally a non-Universal licensed, but Lugosi licensed Dracula, and something went wrong, and they couldn't get the Lugosi license for the head, or they had the Universal license for the other figures, the creature, and there's the Frankenstein is coming out, and then they want to be consistent and make them all Universal, and that created a problem with Lugosi. I don't know. What I do know is a couple years ago they released pictures of a 14-inch Dracula and Frankenstein, and they were going to be in an assortment with a Shazam and a Black Adam. And those 14-inch figures were supposed to be just around the corner. They were going to ship it any week now. You would see them in stores in a matter of days. They were almost here. The ship was on its way. And then they got delayed, and finally, I don't know if Mego ever officially canceled them. I think they, even a year or more later, were still suggesting that, oh no, they're coming. Well, no, they're not coming. The Dracula they showed, it was very similar, I think the costume was, but the head was a different sculpt. And frankly, I preferred that other sculpt. I think it looked more like Lugosi, though it wasn't a Lugosi likeness. It was a generic Dracula, but it looked more in the spirit of Lugosi's Dracula. The shape of the head and everything, and it had more of a aristocratic look. This doesn't really look aristocratic to me. And it didn't have painted on fangs. Like this, I don't think the fangs are sculpted. They look like they're just painted on. I'm not sure, but it might be easier to tell when I see this video later on a computer screen. I might be able to tell, but to my very imperfect naked eyes, the fangs look like they're painted on instead of part of the sculpt. I don't know, but the original version of this that they showed a couple years ago didn't have fangs. It just had a closed mouth. And I like that version more, and I wish they had used that head. Maybe that head didn't get Universal approval. Maybe there's something about that head that Universal didn't like. I don't know. Maybe that head had qualities, details that were too close to Lugosi, and they couldn't use it for that reason. But I think I would have liked this figure more if it had that earlier head on it. But of course, I would like it far more if it had a Lugosi head. Now, why doesn't it have a Lugosi head? Because Mego made a Bela Lugosi Dracula in 8 inches. It was one of the first figures they put out when the new Mego launched with the Target line, exclusive to Target stores. One of the first figures was a Bela Lugosi licensed Dracula, the Broadway Bela Lugosi. It wasn't Universal licensed. And they put it out with a silver lining cape, and then later with a red lining cape. So they had that Lugosi they had that Lugosi license at one time, and they don't have it now. And I don't know if it's something to do with Universal, where it got to the point where you can either make it Universal or you can make it Lugosi, but you can't do both. Something like that. I don't know. I know that I have heard that there is Bela Lugosi licensed Universal Studios Dracula merchandise on its way, but I'm not sure that I've seen photos of it yet. But I've heard from other companies, I've heard that there is Lugosi Universal Dracula stuff heading our way. So I don't know what happened there. I don't know if maybe the Lugosi estate maybe they were shown a sculpt and didn't like it. Maybe they just didn't want to put out a 14-inch figure with Lugosi's likeness. Maybe they had a problem with the format. Who knows? Maybe there's another Lugosi product that they thought it would compete with. And they didn't want to authorize that when they had already authorized the other thing. It's a shame. This really would have been a home run if it had Lugosi's face. So that is a problem. But even with the generic Dracula, the generic sculpt, as I said at the beginning, it's such an imposing, impressive figure, just as a Dracula figure, that it's still very impressive, even though it could have been much more impressive, but it's still very impressive just from the size and how elaborate the costume is. It's a very imposing toy, a very substantial, imposing toy. I mean, it would have been a classic toy if it had the Lugosi head on it. And maybe customizers will make a Lugosi head to stick on there. So it's a shame it doesn't have a Lugosi head. And, Lugosi's not the only Universal Dracula. They could have made Lon Chaney Jr., like Hasbro did. They could have made John Carradine. No toy company has ever done that. And interestingly, Mego has a Hammer license, and they've put out an 8-inch Christopher Lee Dracula. Now, I would love to see 14-inch Hammer figures. So much so, I would have rather they had gone with 14-inch Hammer than 14-inch Universal, if you had to choose one or the other. But they went with Universal. I hope, while they have the Hammer license, I hope they put out a 14-inch Christopher Lee Dracula. They probably won't. From things that Mego representatives have said in interviews, they seem to have an issue when it comes to putting out multiple versions of the same kind of character. Like, they don't, this came up particularly with the Mummy, but it's kind of come up with some other things too. Like, if they already have a Universal Mummy or a generic Mummy, they don't necessarily want to put out a Hammer Mummy because they don't want multiple mummies. They don't think people will buy it. And I bet that's how it is with Dracula. If they've already got one Dracula, they probably don't want to put out another Dracula, even though it's Christopher Lee. That's probably what they would think. I would say it's a completely different. It's as different. Saying Christopher Lee Dracula and Universal Dracula, it's like saying Spider-Man and Batman, as far as I'm concerned. They're different studios, different takes on the character, different actors, even though this isn't Lugosi, but people who want a Christopher Lee Dracula are going to buy a Christopher Lee Dracula. Even if, I don't care if they had 20 other Dracula figures out. If you want Christopher Lee Dracula, you're going to buy Christopher Lee Dracula. And I think that would sell. I think with a big Hammer Studios logo on it, Christopher Lee Dracula would sell very well. And a Peter Cushing Van Helsing, and a Christopher Lee Frankenstein's Creature. And if they could get the rights sorted out with Oliver Reed's Werewolf, apparently there's some issue there. A 14-inch Oliver Reed Werewolf, that would be spectacular. I mean, those would be the Christopher Lee Dracula, Christopher Lee Frankenstein Creature, Peter Cushing, Van Helsing. I would choose Van Helsing over Baron Frankenstein, and the Oliver Reed Werewolf. If they did nothing else, those 14 inches, that would be a spectacular set of toys. And I hope they put something like that out in the next year or two before they no longer have the Hammer license. But back to Universal. So I have some issues, and one of them's got nothing to do with Mego. For this particular toy, it's got a nice tear. So this came from ZLC. That's the company that I bought these from. And this shipped to me with this tear. I don't like that. That's too... I don't need absolute perfection, but this is a little much. Because eventually that tear is going to go all the way to the edge here. And that's going to compromise the lid. So I think, I'm not going to take it back over that, but I think you might see this as a giveaway this Halloween. I might get another one, and that hopefully won't have a tear. And then this might become a giveaway. So, but that's not Mego's fault. These boxes are actually very well built. They're very sturdy. I see it's got a little bend there. Yeah, this isn't the best box. But like I said, it's not because of anything Mego did. It's just I think it got a little beat up in shipping, perhaps. What else can I say about this? It's a really nice Dracula figure, and what what I'd like to, if I can find the right way to express it, what I'd like to say is, if Mego had not relaunched 3 years ago, if it relaunched now, and these were the first toys, or the first wave of toys put out by the new Mego, and if the MC series had not been released a decade ago, then I would have a different attitude about like the reuse of the MC parts. Now, as I said at the top, these are very, very impressive toys. Very, very impressive. But I have a little caveat there that as much as I'm impressed, I still, in the back of my mind, have that kind of nagging feeling that once again Mego is reusing MC parts, recycling them, and I really wish they would stop doing that. If these were like the first wave of toys for the new Mego, then they wouldn't have a history of, over the last 3 years, reissuing the MC Glenn Strange Frankenstein sculpt 3 times with some tweaking, but the same sculpt. Reissuing the MC Wolfman, reissuing, they're going to have a retooled version of the MC Mummy. They had a retooled version of the MC Bride. As we've said, the MC Creature they put that back out, and this Dracula is a head based on the MC head. So they're really getting their money's worth out of those MC parts from a decade ago, and that bothers me. I wish they would not do that. So as much as I like the toys, it's with a little asterisk that I'm aware that this is yet another reuse of the MC parts, the MC sculpts and costume parts too from a decade ago. Now, as I said, the large format, I'm okay with doing that in this larger format because it's very transformative. It really makes it a very different toy. Just looking at these by themselves, but in the context of what Mego has put out over the last 3 years, I have to look at these as part of a cycle, part of a pattern of reusing these head sculpts and reusing some costume designs from the set of toys that came out a decade ago. And it was a different company. MC is not Mego. We don't need to get into the personnel in common between these two companies, but MC was not Mego, and Mego is not MC. They're two companies. There is some personnel in common between MC and Mego, but still, they're two companies. So I really would like to see Mego break the MC habit and cut the cord with MC and leave that in the past. It's now a decade ago, and focus on new designs and new sculpts. As wonderful as these are, and they are great. I don't want to say they're not. They're great. They're great, impressive toys. They would be that much greater if they didn't have that. They weren't tethered to the MC line. If the Dracula had a new head sculpt, the Creature, it's a nice head sculpt, but it's not the ultimate Creature head sculpt. It's not the last word in Creature head sculpts. They could have, especially since it's a 14-inch tall toy, they could have made a new head sculpt. you know, they one thing I haven't mentioned because I can't see it, but I understand this body type is brand new. So this is a bandless body. These 14-inch bodies are bandless. They're not like the old Mego bodies. They're not like the 14-inch Mego bodies from just a year ago. They're brand new designs. And you can't see them. They're covered with costume, but underneath is a brand new body. And that's great. That's fantastic. But there again, if you're going to go through all the trouble to, all the tooling and everything to make a new body, is it so much to ask to also make a new head? Again, you've got to have new tooling for a new head. You can't use tooling for an 8-inch head for a 14-inch head. So you got to make the tooling. So why reuse the sculpt? Why not just make a new sculpt? Have a clean, fresh start. Got new body, new tooling, new everything, new format. Why not have new sculpts? Now, luckily, the Frankenstein that's coming out is a Boris Karloff Frankenstein, so it has a new head sculpt. I'm assuming it's the same as the 8-inch Mego Frankenstein head sculpt, just expanded for 14 inches. But still, it's a new, it's a 2021 head sculpt. And I like that. That's great. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'm sure it's going to be a very impressive figure. Imagine Frankenstein with Boris Karloff likeness, this size. That's going to be something else. And I wish I had it in my hands. But that's going to be impressive. So, and the best thing, it's not connected to a toy from 10 years ago. It's brand new. And that's good. I wish I could say that about these two. So that's my biggest complaint, is just that besides the creature's artwork on the back of the box, I don't like that. But I wish they would have made a clean start with the sculpting and had brand new head sculpts. And I would like to see enough of the MC stuff. We're going to have a mummy that has the MC head. I'm sure it's got some tweaking or whatever, but it's basically the MC head. And I'm sure we're going to see. They'll probably put out the Phantom again, even though they made a Phantom already. They'll probably put out another one with the MC head, or they'll probably do the Mutant or something like that with the MC head. I wish they wouldn't. I wish they would. And if they make, I'm thinking with this 14-inch size, they'll probably do a Wolfman and maybe a mummy, a universal Wolfman and a universal mummy in that format. I hope they do, because I would like to have a nice set of all the major Universal characters. Maybe they'll do a big bride, and particularly with that Wolfman. If you saw my video about the 8-inch Wolfman, I really don't like that Wolfman. So I hope they sculpt a new Wolfman head for the 14-inch Wolfman, which I'm sure is coming. I mean, it hasn't been announced or anything, but I'd be surprised if they didn't make a 14-inch Wolfman to go with these other 14-inch Universal monsters. So when that happens, I hope they sculpt a new head and they don't use that MC Wolfman head again. I hope. I can only hope. All right. So I don't know what else I can say. Despite my criticisms of the reuse of the MC parts and the artwork on the creature, everything else is very impressive. I'm very impressed with these figures. They're very, for the price, about $35 each. You get a lot for your money. You get a whole lot of toy for your money. They're very substantial. They're not hot toys, but they're not priced like hot toys. And they are toys. A Hot Toys figure isn't really a toy. It's an adult display piece. These, even though it says age 17 and over on the box, I would be fine giving one of these to a child if they wanted to play with it. It looks like it could be played with. It looks like a toy. And I like that. I like that they look like toys. So I'm generally enthusiastic about them. We'll see what... I'm sure that Frankenstein is going to be fantastic, and I'll be back here when that finally is released. And I'm sure that will be the jewel in the crown of this 14-inch series. And I hope if they continue with Wolfman, Mummy, Bride, I hope they make new sculpts, particularly of the Wolfman. Now, maybe Mummy, if they're going to do Karloff, which I guess they have to because Universal insists on the Karloff Mummy, probably can't do much better than that MC head, so okay, they'll probably use that. But with a Wolfman, if they do a 14-inch Wolfman, give us a new head. Sculpt a new head. Please don't use that MC head again. That's my wish. I wish upon a star that if we see a Mego 14-inch Wolfman, it has a brand new head sculpt. Okay, I think that's it. We've talked a lot about these 14-inch toys, 14-inch Universal Monster Mego figures. They're pretty cool. A few caveats, but they're really impressive. Formidable toys. They have a fantastic presence. They make a statement. And they're the kind of monster toys I've wanted to see for a long time. So that's it. I hope you're enjoying your summer. I'll be back when I have that Frankenstein. And, of course, Basement of Horror will return during the Halloween season. And we're planning something interesting for Halloween. I won't talk about it yet, but there's something in the works that hopefully will come to fruition that's special for Halloween. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Until next time, Basement of Horror will return.